But I saw something that jumped out, a different kind of rumor, a trade target for the New York Jets. And who is that trade target, you might be wondering? Well, it was Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos, a wide receiver, Courtland Sutton. And I said to myself, kind of like this idea. So let's talk through it. Lindsey Jones reported that the Denver Broncos might actually prefer to move Sutton over Jerry Jeudy. Now, most people, I think, were assuming that if they were to trade away a wide receiver, it might end up being Jerry Jeudy, who's, a younger guy who had a nice bounce back year this year for Denver, has come on a little bit slow, who's drafted in the first round in 2020 by Denver. And, it's been a little bit of a slow build for him, but it was pretty solid last year, over 900 receiving yards there. But Sutton is someone who, they paid, but they might want to prefer to move off of him and keep Jeudy. And, some might ask, well, they're trying to revive Russell Wilson. Why trade any of those guys? Well, their stash of draft picks is fairly abysmal. They don't pick, let me check, until the third round this year. They don't have a first or a second round pick due to the Russell Wilson trade. So you got to recoup some value there. And there's just so many links that you could pull for either, Sutton or Jeudy, but let's talk about Sutton for a second. So the thing that's like slightly confusing on this is it would free up, a nice chunk of change, but the dead money is still up there at $11.5 million. So that is definitely on the high side. And you might go again, why would you really want to take on that kind of dead cap hit to potentially move off of him? But when you're that desperate for any sort of draft assets to get some younger guys in here and to, get this rebuild now in the right direction with Sean Payton, you might do it. And he's under contract through 2025. It's not a massive deal from his age 28 to age 30 season is how long Sutton is under contract for. And the most important thing, you look at, you say, oh, well, his cap hit, if you just look at the cap number, it's 18.2, which for a trading team, that's not what it would be. But then the 2 years after that, 17.3, 17.825 million, but zero guaranteed salary. So essentially you could move off of it. And the Jets, who would be trading for him, kind of just on the hook for the base salary, 14 million in 23, 13 million in 2024, and then 13.5 million in base salary in 2025, which is kind of the going rate for like a wide receiver 2-ish type, which is pretty much what he is. I think he'd be a good Corey Davis replacement, assuming you move on from Corey. And yeah, he's going to cost you a little bit more than Corey Davis, but also a better player than Corey Davis. That's the thing. He's, they're roughly the same age, but he's been the better player. He had an 1,100 yard season back in, 2019. 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns. This past year, in 15 games, 829 yards. Solid. He only had 2 receiving touchdowns, which isn't a lot, but that Denver offense stunk, especially the passing attack. Russell wasn't out there throwing a ton of touchdown passes, but this is a big body receiver at 6'4", 215, which is exactly what this football team needs. If you're moving on from Davis, which again seems pretty likely, you're going to need another big body guy. Someone in free agency I've mentioned a ton is Allen Lazard. Maybe a Jacoby Meyer, someone like that, a middle tier free agent. But if you're able to land Sutton, would you just do that? And what would the cost be? It's not costing you a first round pick. Maybe a couple of day 2 picks. Like one this year or one next year. And I'm not saying like 2 seconds because I don't think it would. You had a second, which ended up turning into pick 32 from the Bears, go to the Pittsburgh Steelers for Claypool. A second and a fourth, something like, I don't know, something along those lines. Maybe it's just the 1 second round pick. I would absolutely look into doing that. And like I said, it's because the Broncos don't have a draft pick until the third round. And what was funny enough, Benjamin Albright, who is a Broncos insider, concocted this trade that if Aaron Rodgers is going to the Jets, would you trade Zach Wilson and Denzel Mims for Courtland Sutton and a 2024 fourth? And again, that is not coming from a Jets person. That is coming from someone, on the as a Broncos staffer. If that is actually what it would take, you say Zach Wilson and Denzel Mims land you Courtland Sutton, and then you get a fourth rounder in 2024, so not this draft, the following draft class, I think you do it. Again, assuming you're landing Aaron Rodgers in this deal, or even if it was Derek Carr, but it almost makes too much sense not to, because Zach doesn't really have too much value, and Mims, I mean, we saw that doesn't really have a ton of value. They didn't decide to move him because the value wasn't there, and he was okay. And in a perfect world, I would probably like to keep Mims as a fourth or fifth option on this team, but I don't think a Wilson and Mims for Sutton and a 2024 fourth round pick is something that's very realistic at all. But if you're able to acquire him for, a couple of day 2 or day 3, mix of day 2 and day 3 picks, then I would highly consider it. You have to, I'll say it one more time, Corey Davis has been written off like he's a goner. You're going to free up that $10.5 million. Great. Who are you bringing in to replace him? And, people have pointed to the draft or, the guys that I ran through, or maybe trading for DeAndre Hopkins or something like that, who's going to cost you more than what Sutton would. I like this idea. I'm in on that. I think that's what the Jets need. And plus, you just brought in his former head coach, who's now the Jets offensive coordinator, in Nathaniel Hackett. And the wide receiver coach that freaking developed him was just hired in Zach Azzanni. That's what I wanted to get into next, is the Jets hire a wide receiver coach. It actually turned out to be a perfect little segue here and a perfect 2-topic intro, because they're kind of connected together. So the Jets hire a new wide receiver coach in Azzanni, and from what I've seen, I like his energy. It's very obvious that Robert Saleh likes guys who have the high energy. Hackett's that, and Azzanni definitely is as well. And what's impressive to me is he's lasted through 3 different regimes from 2018 to 2022 in Denver. He was there for 5 years with Vance Joseph, Vic Fangio, and the 1 year with Hackett. But he comes and joins the New York Jets. And you look at the list of guys who he's been able to get stuff out of: Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Kendall Hinton. He played a role in all of those guys to where they are, at this point in their career. Those are solid. Sutton, Patrick, and Jeudy is a nice wide receiver room. Are any of those guys absolute, no doubt about it, stars? No, but are they all serviceable wide receivers? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if he's able to, he's like the cockroach, almost like Brant Boyer, surviving through all these, different regime changes. It shows that he's probably pretty damn good at his job. I like it. It's crazy that I'm almost like more excited about this hire than the Todd Downing hire. And I know that Downing, has the connection to Derek Carr, so that's nice. But just from an upside perspective, you're bringing someone in who's served in that role before, so he has experience as a wide receiver coach, which is great. But then also, you have at the same time an up and coming offensive mind who's, a high energy guy. I'm not saying he's ever maybe who knows. I don't think he is ever going to be an OC or head coach, but good positional coaches matter, and I like it. I'm excited about the Jets hire and adding him to the mix. And I definitely think it makes sense when you see people bring up guys like Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. But of the two, I know Jerry Judy's younger, but Sutton on that deal, I think would be a nice add.